Fletcher Tabatone.
Thanks again, sir. Look, listening to this debate in this House this afternoon has kind of consolidated a lot of my thoughts on this particular government, and I hope I've coined a phrase here, sir. This government strikes me as the media masters of circumstance. Ms Kuriga, Mr Goldsmith, Mr English, tell us these wonderful stories. Mr Bishop, for example, claims that somehow essentially 0% inflation is the government's doing, and it highlights excellent government management. Mr Chair, this is either naive or deliberately misleading, and Mr Bishop is not naive. Falling international...
Order. The member might have attempted to use a device, but he did breach standing orders. Then he will withdraw the comment. Just stand up and say, I withdraw.
Certainly, sir, I do withdraw that comment, and I apologise. Falling international commodity prices, including but especially falling oil prices, are the reason for inflation being so low in this country. This is thanks to, for example, structural changes in China, which means they're not spending as much as they once were on large infrastructure. The war in Russia and the Ukraine and the political uncertainty there are certainly something I would suggest this government not claim as beneficial to New Zealand. The Minister himself described the poor and unfortunate circumstances in Australia and claimed that, or several of our members claimed that New Zealanders coming home, people voting with their feet, are an indication of the excellent management of the New Zealand economy. Sir, I would suggest to you that the excellent or unfortunate circumstances in the Australian economy mean that New Zealanders are simply returning home because that once golden light, that once golden economy that was in Australia is not there anymore, and it is an opportunity to return home. But claiming this is again somehow Nationals doing. New Zealanders, or Northlanders in particular, certainly weren't voting for this government in the Northland by-election, and I would have thought that it would have painted a very clear picture for this government to stand up and listen. National continues to tell stories that are edited, sir. In fact, the dairy industry, they're relying on hard-working dairy farmers who have had such a wonderful run of it and are hard-working, innovative, competing on an international framework. This government claims their success is their own and implies that it is their doing. So this government needs to take account of the true economic position that they have taken this country into. We've got a $7.4 billion current account trade deficit. We have, interestingly, 2,645 entities generated $89.4 billion in revenue, but then they spent $92.2 billion, leaving a large gap of $2.9 billion in return. This is not only over 40% of gross domestic product, but it is a sight of a lot more, Mr Chair, than what the government beats its chest over. When, sir, it was quoted that the strategy for returning to surplus is based on expenditure restraint, which another government was criticised for earlier, this will mean spending will fall below 30% of GDP during the coming 4 years, down from a peak of essentially 35%. The Minister of Finance said that, only in March did he say that, but any homeowner or business owner that can tell you what this means in the long term, that it is actually a recipe for disaster. You can't simply cut expenditure, sir, and hope that it will solve all your problems. Balancing a budget, which this government actually hasn't been able to do in its time here, creating a surplus is, by cutting expenditure, is not a solution to New Zealand's problems. While the government may have $256.1 billion worth of assets, for example, it has $175.3 billion worth of liabilities. And just as an aside, New Zealanders still wonder why some of those highest earning assets in terms of profits generated were sold off. It just makes no sense. If we view the Crown as a company, That kind of gearing ratio of more than 50% would be considered high, sir. This government, in the widest sense, sits at 61%. And I'm worried, as should every New Zealander be, because that raises a big question over the financial management that this government claims to be expert at.
Jonathan Young.